Hello BookTube, my name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. I'm in a tiny little box and this is where I'm going to be for the whole thing, so I'm trying something different, but I've still got no rhythm. Today I was looking at Twitter where I follow a chap called Don Winslow, who is a writer, a thriller writer. I've got one of his books. I haven't read it yet, but we'll talk about him in a second when his name comes up. And he posted on Twitter how he was grateful to Parade.com for including him in this list of the 110 best thriller, crime and suspense novels of all time. So I thought, well, that sounds like the kind of article I'd be interested in reading. So I clicked the link, read the article, and now I thought I would share it with you because I think it's an interesting list. And the reason why I think it's interesting is because I've read a whole bunch of books that are on this list. That tells me that it's the kind of thing, you know, it's talking to me. But then it also means there's a bunch of books on this list that I've never read and some I've never heard of that maybe I should read. So it works for me both ways because I have read many of the books on the list, so the other ones now intrigue me. So I thought I would share it with you and try and go through this. I've already filmed one version of this, which took forever, so I'm going to try and do it a bit more speedily this time and see if we can make this a video that people other than me would enjoy watching. So 110 best thriller, crime and suspense novels of all time from Parade.com. I'll leave the link down below, but let's have a look. They're not in any particular order, and it's a very weird, as we'll see, definition of what makes up a crime novel, a thriller novel. They have a separate list, I think, of 100 best mystery novels, and I think there's even some overlap, but separated out mystery, and this is crime. Well, we'll see. Okay, let's start. The first one on this list is The Talented Mr. Ripley by Patricia Highsmith. I read all 5 of the Ripley books and at least one other Patricia Highsmith called A Suspension of Mercy, I believe. They're fantastic. Ripley is dark, and he's probably a sociopath, and highly recommended. There was a movie made of The Talented Mr. Ripley, sort of sun-baked movie directed by the late Anthony Minghella, which is also terrific. But really good. Recommend Ripley. What else we got on here? Winter's Bone. I love Winter's Bone. Really, really knocked me for 6. This is the first Woodrow that I read, and I went on to read a trilogy of his books, and I have another one lined up. This was made into a movie for which Jennifer Lawrence was nominated for an Oscar. It's set in the freezing cold. It is bare bones, really the rawest and just a fantastic bit of sort of modern noir. Highly recommended. And then we've got Live and Let Die, which is James Bond. I read all those. I have friends who read them when we were teenagers, and I didn't. I read them, I think, in my 20s, collected like these beautiful old pan paperbacks. I'm not going to recommend Bond to everyone. Obviously he's dated. Clearly there are issues there, but I had a fun time. I've always loved the movies, and I came from the movies first to the books, so I read them as a sort of curio to find out what James Bond was about. And yeah, he's not going to be everyone's cup of tea in 2022, but I had a fondness of collecting them as much. I've got I have a whole set in these old sort of 60s and 70s pan reprinted, not the originals, which go for a pretty penny, but they're just good to look at and they look nice on the shelves. And so that was my experience with Bond. I don't remember Live and Let Die particularly being, you know, Live and Let Die is like Solitaire and Mr. Big, and well, that's the movie. I don't remember much about the book version and why that's been picked out here. What else we got? Ton of French in the Woods, the first Dublin Murder Squad. I read the first one, didn't go on and read others. I have the second one sitting around somewhere, but it's been sitting on my TBR for at least 5 years, if not more, because the first one was a little dense and wordy. I know that the thing about the Dublin Murder Squad is, even though it's part of a series, each one has a different focus, different members of the police force that they focus on. So you don't necessarily need to have read the early ones to keep up, but I know a lot of people love Tana French, and I had a sort of middling experience with that first one. Margaret Atwood, Alias Grace. This is what I mean by being a bit of an odd list. Yeah, I liked Alias Grace. It's not my favourite Atwood. I think I skipped The Robber Bride, but this is solid mid-career, big chunky literary novel. Whether it qualifies as a thriller, I don't know, but Alias Grace, like that. Jeffrey Archer, absolutely shoddy author, and convicted perjurer, by all-round villain. Cain and Abel was a huge book in the 70s. While everyone read that, it's awful. I flicked through. I never read the whole thing. We did have a copy, I think, in my house of A Quiver Full of Arrows, which was Archer's short stories, and I took it with me into the toilet one time, just something to read, and it was so inept, so dreadfully written. It read like a kid next to me in school reading out his essay for the teacher. It was so poorly put together and just atrocious. My understanding is that he does plots. This was a big successful one, and First Among Equals was huge because I think people like his plots, but that limited exposure I had to his prose said I'm never going to read this, and it turns out he's an arsehole anyway, so good riddance. After that, we've got Those Bones Are Not My Child, which I have never heard of. I don't know anything about Tony Cade Bambara. If you do know anything about Tony, this is edited by Toni Morrison, according to what it says here. I don't know anything about it. Please let me know whether I should read Those Bones Are Not My Child by Tony Cade Bambara. Tony Cade Bambara. Okay. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This is the first Elizabeth Salander, which was supposed to be a huge, big series, but Stieg Larsson sadly passed away after only 3. And the series has been continued by a chap called David Lagerkrantz. So I read the 3 Stieg Larsson Salander books, and I read the 3 Lagerkrantz, which were the Larsson ones are terrific. Just rollicking good read. Big, thick books, but just really readable and dark. Some nasty aspects to it, and so not for everyone. Lagerkrantz had some good moments, and then the last one was just absolute fulfilling contract, and sort of left a bad taste in the mouth. LA Confidential, Elroy. Well, I love Elroy, and I've read everything Elroy's written, and I will continue to read everything he's written. Started with American Tabloid, and then went on to the LA Quartet, of which this is the 3rd in the series. Listen right there, Black Dahlia, Big Nowhere, LA Confidential, and White Jazz. He's not for everyone. There's a reason he's the demon dog of American noir, but he's fantastic. He's in the middle of another quartet right now. I think we had the first 2, and I would love to spend the rest of my life reading Elroy, but he's a man in his 70s now, I believe. So hopefully we'll get at the end of this quartet. But whatever he's willing to put out, I will be there for. Love Elroy. Love LA Confidential. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier is the only Daphne du Maurier I read, but it's fantastic. It's well worth the hype. I know I should go back and read My Cousin Rachel or Jamaica Inn, but so far Rebecca's the only one I've read, but it's as good as they say. Black Wings Has My Angel. This is by Elliot Chase. Never heard of Elliot Chase. Never heard of Black Wings Has My Angel, but what a fantastic title. This is the New York Review Books edition, the NYRB, which they use this imprint to sort of rediscover forgotten works, so most famously John William Stoner, which I know a lot of people have read and loved, and me included, but this looks really interesting. So I'd love to know if anyone's read Duncan McCurdy. You ever heard of Elliot Chase? I don't know anything about him. NYRB also put out Laura by Vera Kaspari, which was which Duncan turned me on to, which I read and loved. So I'd love to hear about this, whether this is worth looking out for and picking up. Tom Clancy, never in Tom Clancy. I've seen all the film and TV versions of Jack Ryan, but never gone and read any of the books. Not sure they'll really be my thing, even though there's a lot of them. Maybe one day stuck on a deserted island, I may be forced to read them, and maybe they'd be okay, but I haven't read any so far. Let me know if I should read Clancy. Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Crosby. Read this, Cosby, sorry, not Crosby. I read this very recently and thought it was terrific. So I recommend that. That was literally read that a week ago. I think it's on my Friday reads. Dean Koontz, Odd Thomas. Never read any Dean Koontz because he's sort of, I put him in the Stephen King horror genre. The Odd Thomas is a series of these, right? And it was made into a movie with the late Anton Yelchin. But didn't read it, and it's all sort of he sees ghosts and demons and bargains with the devil or something. I don't know what they're not my thing. What else? Count of Monte Cristo. So quite a great list that we've got LA Confidential and the Count of Monte Cristo in the same list, because if you haven't read the Count of Monte Cristo, it is as exciting. It is as good. Easily accessible. It's not like a classic that's hard to get into. It's a great big thick book, but definitely worth your time. Count of Monte Cristo. Eileen, on another odd, seeing the juxtaposition of these things. I liked Eileen. I just read recently The Discomfort of Evening by Marika Lucas Weinfeld, which is transgressive and icky and body stuff, and Eileen is much worse than that, much more transgressive, and I liked Eileen a lot more than the Reinfeld book. I recommend Steve Donahue doesn't have many good things to say about Moshfegh, but I thought this was suitably transgressive and weird and icky and made for uncomfortable reading in a good way. What else we got? Val McDermid, Out of Bounds. Yeah, so I've read one Val McDermid book, which I really didn't like. And I like Val McDermid. Like, I listened to her on the radio. She's on the Round Britain quiz, and she's a smart lady. She's roughly my age and got good taste in music. And I like listening. She really knows her stuff and is a very, very clever woman. And I read one of her books. It was the first Wire in the Blood series, I think. And it was... I really hated it. to the extent I don't want to read any more of Val McDermott, but I still listen to it on the radio. Out of Bounds by Val McDermott. Tell me I'm wrong. Thomas Harris, Silence of the Lambs. Never read it. Seen the books. Seen the movies. And I've actually liked the prequel. Is the first Hannibal Lecter book was Red Dragon, which was originally filmed as Manhunter. Before it was refilmed as Red Dragon with Anthony Hopkins, it was made as Michael Mann. The great Michael Mann made the movie Manhunter with Brian Cox, who's now familiar to everyone from Succession. And I really rate Manhunter. It was a fantastic movie. And Silence of the Lambs, the movies scare me enough. I don't, maybe one day I would go back and read them, but I don't think so. What else we got? The Goldfinch. Maybe it's a thriller. It's just a terrific piece of work. Probably The Secret History is more of a thriller, but maybe either way, I don't care. Donna Tartt is amazing. I will continue to read everything she puts out every 10, 12 years or so. Loved Secret History, loved Little Friend, loved The Goldfinch, love The Goldfinch. So read Donna Tartt if you haven't. I know it's a great big book, and I know everyone was talking about it. And if you maybe feel like you missed out, go back and read it. It's everything you want from modern literary fiction with a thriller twist on it. Long Came Spider. Never any James Patterson. I know he's hugely prolific, including wrote a book with Bill Clinton, or I think he has got a team of people writing his children's books in the imprint of James Patterson. He's a business. I think he's one of the most widely read authors. I've never read anything by him. Sorry. This is the first Alex Cross. Been filmed a couple of times. There was a Morgan Freeman Alex Cross movie. I think Along Came a Spider, and then there was a movie called Alex Cross with what's his name? Medea. What's the actor's name? Anyway, he wasn't. Anyway, not my thing. I haven't read any James Patterson. Godfather, Mario Puzo. This was, I think, originally written as a screenplay that no one would film, and so he went and wrote the book. And when that became a success, so the movie studios came calling. So I always thought of the book actually as the lesser, or the bastard child of the movie he wanted to make. So I've never gone back and read the book, despite the fact that I love Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. So I haven't read it. What A Coffin for Demetrios. Don't know this book. Never any Eric Ambler. I understand that he's super important in terms of the British spies and pre-James Bond and all those kind of, mentions Bond, but I've never read any Eric Ambler. Not quite sure where to start or if I would enjoy him. So if anyone has tips on where to start with Eric Ambler, let me know. Let's go. James Crumley, The Last Good Kiss. I read. So this is the first in the series with what's his name? The name of the character. But I read another James Crumley, which I didn't love, and so I've never gone back and read this. But it's supposed to be classic private eye stuff. Let me know if I should read The Last Good Kiss. Bluebird by Attica Locke. I read everything Attica Locke has published so far, and I loved every word of it. She's amazing. Read Attica Locke. What else we got? The Air Affair, a Thursday Next novel by Jasper Fforde. I read this one. This is the first in this. There's a whole series of books that sort of live in the world of books, and characters from fiction come out into the real world and vice versa. And it was cutesy. So I didn't feel any need to go back and read any more of the Thursday Next series. Thursday Next is the name of the character, so I read this and it was okay, but I stopped there. Double Indemnity, James M. Cain. If you haven't read James M. Cain, you should. Double Indemnity is a classic of the noir genre, dark-hearted. When you realise these books were written in the 30s and 40s, just really, really bleak, and Cain has written a whole bunch of these things, and they were famously made into the basis of the noir genre movies in the 40s. WMD's made, and the Postman Always Rings Twice was made and then remade in the early 80s with Jack Nicholson and Jessica Lange. Worth checking out. If you love this, if you like old noir, then Cain is one of the masters. I put him up there with Chandler and Hammett. John D. MacDonald, the first in the Travis McGee series. They're all colour-coded. I've read about 17. There are about 17, 18 of these. I've read 5, and then my brother's gone on and read more. Retrograde, I'm not sure I can recommend them. They're kind of rattle along and they're good fun, but he's a big macho lunk, and his sort of not very pleasant attitudes towards women, but they're kind of fun of their time, but I don't think they necessarily hold up well and would struggle to recommend them. Gillian Flynn, I'm on record as really, really hating the experience I had with Gone Girl. It's page-turning, but it's manipulative and nasty and unpleasant and deeply misanthropic. Don Winslow's The Force, I haven't read, so Don Winslow's the reason why I'm making this video because he recommended this article. But I haven't read Don Winslow. I've got that first one, The Power of the Dog, which is the first in the trilogy, and we'll get to it soon, I hope. Mary Stewart, Nine Coaches Waiting, looks sort of like a romance thriller. I'm unlikely to read it, but tell me if I'm wrong. I should read Mary Stewart and Nine Coaches Waiting, although I probably won't. Dare Me by Megan Abbott. I've read one. Megan Abbott, Queenpin, like Kingpin, but Queenpin, and she's good, and she's a sort of modern female noir writer, and definitely well, based on the one book that I read, was good, and I'm sure I will read more Megan Abbott in the future. Oliver Twist. It's everyone. I wouldn't necessarily put this in a list of thrillers, but I think we know Oliver Twist. I haven't read Oliver Twist, but I know everything about it. I know. I guess it fits the thriller genre. We have an orphan who's trying to discover who his parents are. We have a den of thieves. We have a murder. My sister once played Nancy in the musical As Long as He Needs. But other than that, I haven't read the book. I've read some other Dickens, but I need to read more. And one day I probably will read Oliver Twist. Room by Emma Donoghue. Yeah, this was grueling. I didn't watch the movie because the book was grueling up, but it's good. But yeah, harsh. Ken Follett, never any Ken Follett. He used to do a lot of spy books, and then he's got that Pillars of the Earth, where each one is like 1,000 pages long. So I haven't read any Ken Follett. It was big in the 70s, and now still big amongst people who love great big books about building cathedrals and things, but not for me. Karen Slaughter, never any Karen Slaughter. Tell me why I'm wrong. Leanne Moriarty, this is sort of Reese Witherspoony, Nicole Kidman territory, but I haven't read her. Dexter, I watched the first few series of the TV show and then got fed up before the last series, which was by all accounts a disaster, and I haven't watched the reboot. So I think I'm kind of done with Dexter. I don't think I'd go back and read the books, although, tell me why I'm wrong. Expensive People by Joyce Carol Oates. She's tremendously prolific. I've never read any Joyce Carol Oates. Really sorry, Eric Carl Anderson. I know you're a big fan, but she puts out 2 or 3 books a year, and some of them are very big. And I haven't read any. And should I start here, or I don't know? What else? We've got Swamp Sister by Robert Edmund Alter. I never heard of Robert Edmund Alter or Swamp Sister. Recommended here by Andrew Vax, which is a great recommendation. If you've read this book, let me know. But this is the kind of thing that I might look up, because I love Vax, who died very recently. And it comes up next, I believe. Yeah, there's Flood, the first in the Burke series. Love the Burke series. So I really love Vax. I feel like I learned a lot from him, as well as the books being rattling good reads. Some of his other non-Burke series books, I think there was a serious diminishing of quality, but there's I don't know how many there are, 16, 20 books in the Burke series, and I loved every single one of them. Highly recommended, and Flood is a great place to start. It's the first one, and it's great. Never Any Robin Cook, again big in the 70s. That first wave of sort of Michael Crichton stuff as well, but out of fashion, and never really read him. Clockers by Richard Price. Yeah, I love this, and I've read a couple of other Richard Price books, and he's one of those authors who deals with sort of the urban landscape where criminals and cops coexist, and there's not a moral judgment on how each behaves, and so very much part of the Wire family. So David Simon, I think, picked Price to write some episodes for the Wire, along with George Pelecanos, who's going to show up soon as well. So I like that kind of sort of gritty view of the world, which isn't making moral judgments, but placing, as Omar says, you got the briefcase, I got the gun, it's all in the game. Very bad paraphrasing of Omar, the late Michael K. Williams. Frederick Forsyth, another one of those 70s authors which is kind of out of fashion, made into movies back in the 70s, The Dead Jackal, The Odessa Files, and never read him. It was kind of a book my parents read. John Grisham, seen all the movies, never read the books, picked up a copy of The Firm once that someone else had because everyone was reading it. But it sold millions, and the writing looked really weak, and so just didn't bother any further with Grisham. But like the movies, I saw The Client recently on a plane. Really held up. It was a good movie. Charlene Harris, Dead Until Dark. This is the first Suki Stackhouse. Was made into TV series True Blood, which I watched the first episode, and there was werewolves and vampires and fairies, and it wasn't really my thing. Dennis Lehane, Mystic River. So I like Dennis Lehane. I haven't read Mystic River, but I've read the 6 books in the Kenzie Gennaro series, and then another trilogy about it's sort of epic trilogy about the Irish in Boston, and Ben Affleck filmed one of them, and nobody went to see it. But I like Dennis Lehane. Bone Collector, Lincoln Rhyme, I believe, is paraplegic, at least in the first book. The original movie was Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie. My dad read these, but I've never read any Jeffrey Deaver, but my dad read them. I think they're sort of supposed to be pretty gruesome and dark, but I just never got around to them. Sarah Waters Fingersmith, we love Fingersmith. I've read one other Sarah Waters, but this is fantastic. Victorian lesbian noir, highly recommended. Lawrence Block, love that Matthew Scudder series. This is one, When the Sacred Gym Closes, is the sixth one. I don't know recall why the sixth one is better than the others, but I've read them all. I've got except the last one, which he published about 10 years after he finished, and I've just picked that up in hardback when I was in the States. And I've read his other series, Bernie Roddenbarr, and I've read his series about Hitman, and I like Lawrence Block. He's another hugely prolific writer. Snap by Belinda Bauer, I believe, was longlisted for the Booker Prize 3 or 4 years ago, but I didn't read it. Let me know if I should. The Daughter of Time by Josephine Tay, I've never read, but I remember this book was on the shelf in my dorm when I was in seminary. I don't think one of my roommates read it either, but I remember the book being there. I'm not a big fan of historical fiction and not my kind of thing. I don't know who that's supposed to be. Is that Thomas More or some Tudor somewhere? I don't know. Haven't read it. Let me know if I should. John Buchan, 39 Steps. Never read John Buchan's 39 Steps, and I have a copy because I think my daughter asked me to get her a copy, and she was going to read it, but I don't think she did, and it's sitting on the TBR. Don't know if I'm ever going to get around to it. Sorry. Where Are the Children by Mary Higgins Clark. Never read Mary Higgins Clark. Tell me if I should. I'm not sure. Philip K. Dick, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which was made into the movie Blade Runner. I feel like I might have read this. Or maybe I'm getting mixed up with We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, which became Total Recall. I know this is sort of more philosophical than Blade Runner, but I've seen Blade Runner countless times. First time I saw Blade Runner in the cinema in 1982 and took a girl, and it was the first time I had a snog. I've seen it since then without any snogging being involved, but it's memorable for me for that. But I'm not sure. I don't think I've read the book. I don't have a copy, certainly. So I'm not sure if I've actually read the whole thing from cover to cover. Tess Gerritsen, never read any Tess Gerritsen, although I think I saw the first episode of Rizzoli and Isles, which was wasn't not my thing. Jim Thompson, he's kind of in the pantheon with Kane and Hammett and Chandler, but I don't think I've read any Jim Thompson. I think he wrote The Grifters, right, which was made the Stephen Frears movie with Annette Bening, and then Killer Inside Me was made recently with is it Casey Affleck? But I don't think I've read it, and I don't know Jim Thompson at all. Denise Mina, I haven't read Conviction, but I've read two of her series. So I've read 3 books in the Paddy Sheehan series, which is a Scottish reporter, and then Alex Short. I think there's 5 of those. And she's a detective, but her brother's a gangster, and it's great. I like Dennis Mina, and I know she did a run on Hellblazer, the John Constantine comic. So I've got a lot of time for Denise Mina, but I haven't read this, but I'm sure I will read her again. Perfect Spy, John le Carré. Only have read one John le Carré, Call for the Dead, which is the first George Smiley. And again, he was big at the time that I was young and my parents might have read this kind of stuff, and so I didn't, and I just sort of pigeonholed him there. But now he's passed. I don't know if I'll go back and read him. Christian Hannah, The Nightingale. No, this is a big book and I didn't read it. Let me know if I should go back and take the time. Mick Herron, this is the first in the Slough House. We're up to about 7 or 8 books now. The last one was actually called Slough House, and this is Slow Horses. And I love this whole series. Of sort of failed spies who've been demoted and hung out to dry, and given shitty jobs to do, and yet somehow they manage to uncover things and get involved with all sorts of crises. And they're great. And Jackson Lamb is a great character, and he's being played by Gary Oldman, I think, in a Apple TV show that's supposed to come out this year. Looking forward to that. John Sanford, Rules of Prey. There's about 30 of these. Lucas Davenport, and there's a spin-off with another character. I haven't read any of them. I kind of interested. Maybe I was looking for the first 3 in a bind-up, and maybe I decided if I want to go further, but I didn't find it, so not on the agenda for this year. Maybe at some point in the future I'll do these. True Grit by Charles Porter is absolutely outstanding. Really worth your time. Definitely read this. Don't get too hung up on the fact that John Wayne was in the movie. I've got a movie tie-in version of the recent Coen Brothers remake with Jeff Bridges as Rooster Cogman, but just outstanding, funny, witty, smart. Don't think of it as a Western, therefore not for you. It's just an outstanding book. I don't know anyone who read True Grit and did not find it absolutely first class. George Pelecanos, my beloved George Pelecanos, read everything that George Pelecanos has written and will continue to read everything George Pelecanos has written. Not sure he's everyone's cup of tea, but I find him a writer of integrity with, he's a bit of a man's man, I guess, a bit. That might be a complaint that some people have, but just really strong characters with people who have at least their own code and try to live by that, and shit happens all around them that they are inevitably dragged into. Good stuff. I love all, and the Big Blowdown is a great book. I think it kicked off another quartet of his. Definitely worth reading. Killing Floor. It's the first Jack Reacher book. I'm going to spoil it for you now, because if you don't know anything about Jack Reacher, he's 6'5", he's a big lunk, and he worked in the military police, but now he's a drifter, and he drifts from town to town, and everywhere he goes, men are scared of him, and women want to sleep with him. It's bizarre. And so in the Killing Floor is the first one, the only one I've read. He steps off a bus in a strange town, because he's a drifter. Did I mention he's a drifter? And he drifts into town, and somehow, it pretty much trips over a dead body whose legs are sticking out of a bush. And because he's a drifter, the police want interested, but he's a big, strong guy. And it turns out that the dead body that he tripped over in this town he's never visited is his brother. I mean, it was so bonkersly ridiculous that I just never bothered reading any more of those. So sorry, I've now spoiled it for you, so you don't have to read any Jack Reacher, but I'm done with it. Louise Erdrich, The Roundhouse, loved this. This was a really strong book, again, thriller. But Louise Erdrich is a literary writer of the highest caliber, and I've got her latest book lined up because it's in the tournament of books this year, so I'm going to read that soon. Alan First, never read any Alan First. This is book 12 in the Night Soldier series, so don't know anything about that. Let me know if I should read Alan First. Mother Love by Dominique Taylor, a.k.a. Roger Longrig. I'm sorry, I don't know anything about Dominique Taylor or Roger Longrig or Mother Love. Tell me why I'm wrong. Sacred Games by Vikram Chandra. Chandra and Chandler. I guess there's a nice the fact they would sit next to each other on the shelf. If this is indeed sort of detective noir, a thriller set in Bombay, I like the idea of that. Is anyone? I see that Netflix thing. It's kind of interesting. I wonder if it's been made, or exists, or it's coming. Let me know. Should I read Vikram Chandra, and is Sacred Games a good way in? In a Lonely Place, another NYRB thing. Dorothy B. Hughes, not Dorothy L. Sayers. I don't know anything about Dorothy B. Hughes, but 1947 classic. I read recently Laura by Vera Kaspari, which Duncan McCurdy turned me on to, and it was in NYRB edition. So let me know if I should read In a Lonely Place by Dorothy B. Hughes. Laura Lippman. So I've read a whole bunch of series books by Laura Lippman, but none of her standalones. And I kind of gave up on the series because they were very mixed. They were patchy. Some were good and then some were quite weak. But Laura Lippman, What the Dead Know, let me know if I should read that. Eric Jerome Dickey. Don't know anything about Eric Jerome Dickey or the Gideon series. That cover there, the title Sleeping with Strangers, that cover suggests to me that it's not necessarily something that I'd be interested in, but who knows. Rogue Mail was a book that was given to us in school when I'm about 12 years old, so we read it in class, and I don't remember enjoying it very much. It's 1939. This iconic thriller was a wish fulfillment for millions of people around the world. He's an assassin, I think, and he's got a big elephant gun, and I don't remember much about it, but that was a school read. The Yiddish Policeman's Union, I think, is probably my favourite Shea Bond book, more than Cavalier and Clay for me. I think this just totally worked and loved it. Highly recommend The Yiddish Policeman's Union. Carl Hyson, I read a couple of Carl Hyson books back in the day. I think first time I went to America and we were flying into Orlando, and so I bought Striptease, which is set then, and it was around that time, but later made into a movie with Demi Moore and Burt Reynolds, I believe. Anyway, Striptease was a fun read, and I read another one, but I don't think it was tourist season. Carl Hyson. The Girl on the Train, Paula Hawkins. Yeah, so this was a massive seller all around the world, and I read this, and I remember that I worked out who the murderer was pretty early on, because there was a very limited set of named characters, and once you decide it has to be one of the people that we know, there was a very limited number of people it could be, and it turned out it was the most obvious one. So disappointing in terms of that, but it launched a whole genre of drunken amnesiac untrustworthy narrators and not remembering what they're supposed to remember, that vital piece of information. George V. Higgins, The Friends of Eddie Coyle. Yeah, I read this recently because this is a classic of the genre. I was a little disappointed, so I haven't gone back and read any more Higgins, but he's one of the names, and Eddie Coyle is the name book, but didn't read it for me. Perhaps I was expecting a bit too much. Helen McInnes, never any Helen McInnes above suspicion. Anyone recommend this? Love to know more about that. Spoonbenders by Daryl Gregory. Never heard of this. Never heard of Daryl Gregory. Don't know this. Here's the pitch. Spoonbenders is like the Redford Newman movie The Sting, but with psychics. Yeah, I love The Sting, but with psychics. I don't know. Tell me, should I read Spoonbenders? Do anyone know anything about Daryl Gregory? I don't even know when this book is from. Kind of intrigues me, but also I think I could skip it. The Blank Wall by Elizabeth Sanksay Holding. Raymond Chandler said she was the best suspense writer of all. So that looks like a Persephone edition. I haven't read any Persephone books. I don't know anything about Elizabeth Sanksay Holding. I'd never heard of The Blank Wall. That Raymond Chandler recommendation is super strong. Can someone who's read this or knows anything about this author please tell me why I should read this? 40 Words for Sorrow by Giles Blunt. Don't know anything about this. Don't love that cover. Who's on there? Jonathan Kellerman is on there, and might not be my kind of thing. Richard Stark, read everything by Richard Stark, who's a pseudonym for Donald Westlake, who wrote sort of more comic thrillers, and Richard Stark's character Parker there's no comedy here. It is absolutely bare bones. Parker is a sociopath. He's a crook and a thief. And each one of the books there's a crew put together. Either Parker puts the crew together or Parker is invited to join a crew, and they do a job, and something happens, and he is only ever moving forward in one direction. If you cross him, he will make you pay. He will make sure he gets his cut, and that he survives and gets away. Absolutely raw as anything, and fantastic. They're just the most propulsive thrillers that Westlake wrote over a number of years. There's a pause in the middle, about 17 years, where after Butcher's Moon, before he wrote a book called Comeback in the early 2000s. So they span, I think, 30-40 years. All these books, I've read them all. They're outstanding. Highly recommend. This is the first one. The Hunter is the first of the Parker books. Kim by Rudyard Kipling. Rudyard Kipling's super out of favour, not very spoken about on BookTube, and I read a bunch of Rudyard Kipling. Kim, not as memorable for me as, say, The Jungle Book or Just So Stories, which are not thrillers at all. But yeah, Kim, not many people reading him these days. Stephen King, 11/22/63, or if you're in the UK, 22/11/63. And if you don't know what those dates refer to, then I can't help you. But yeah, I haven't read any Stephen King because he's too scary. This is probably not one of the scary ones, but not my thing. Barry Eisler, A Clean Kill in Tokyo. Like the sound, but this is a John Rain novel, and this was previously published as Rainfall, according to the cover of that book. Haven't read, don't know anything about John Rain, a half Japanese, half American, guaranteeing this loner will never quite fit in anywhere. Yeah, that sounds like my kind of thing, but I don't know anything about this book or Barry Eisler. Let me know if I should. Get Carter by Ted Lewis. This was originally called Jack's Return Home, and then made in the movie. Get Carter is the name of the movie, with Michael Caine. Fantastic sort of 60s, I guess, late 60s or early 70s, I think late 60s, classic thriller in England, where Jack Carter goes back to Newcastle, goes home to find out about a crime that has taken place there. He's a criminal, he's an enforcer, and he's made it to the big leagues in London, but he goes home to find out something that's happened close to home. Outstanding, really, really strong book. Amazing movie if you've never seen it. So Much Pretty by Cara Hoffman. No idea. Should I read this? Doesn't really look, that cover is not promising. Is that a dragon? What is that? No, it's an origami bird. Don't know. Know nothing about this. Rosemary's Baby, R11, too scary for me. I know I've never seen the film. It's a Roman Polanski movie with Mia Farrow as Rosemary and her baby. I'm not even going to talk about it, too scary, and very 70s, a bit dated. R11, I think, also wrote The Stepford Wives and stuff like that. Out, a thriller by Kirino Natsuo. Anybody? Don't know anything about this. The Queen of Japanese Crime. I don't know anything about this book or this author. Tell me why I should read her. Road to Perdition by Max Allan Collins. This was made into a movie with Tom Hanks and I think one of Paul Newman's last roles. I think one of Daniel Craig's earliest roles. And I read this. It's a graphic novel. The artwork is not great, all black and white, by Richard Piers Rayner. I didn't love it. And the story itself kind of The Fourth Wall by Barbara Paul. Don't know this book. Charlene Harris loves talking about this hidden gem. That's not a great recommendation. She was the True Blood lady. Fourth Wall set in the theatre. Don't know. Anybody know The Fourth Wall by Barbara Paul? What else we got? Harlan Coben, Tell No One. So I read first 3 Myron Bolitar. This is a standalone. I feel like I've seen this movie. Is this a movie, Tell No One? I feel like it with Michael Douglas. Is that even possible? Am I just making that up? Anyway, I read some Harlan Coben Inessential, and don't really fancy the standalones. Malice Aforethought, a story of a commonplace crime. Don't know this, but the name is familiar. Francis Isles, don't know that name either. I think it says a classic crime novel, and I feel like that name's been in my head for a while, but I don't know what that's about. Smiller's Sense of the Snow. My version, I think, is called Miss Smiller's. There's a different published under a different name in the UK. It's in translation from Swedish, I want to say. I don't know. Peter Hög. This was a big book in say 95, 94, 95, 96. I took it with me when we moved to Israel. It was one of the books, so I must have bought it winter 95 and read it spring 96. And yeah, it was great, but I think it's disappeared off people's radar. I don't think Peter Hög published too much afterwards. So this was a big book at its time, big thriller at its time, made into a movie with Julia Ormond that has kind of disappeared from people's memory. The Eight by Catherine Neville. That cover is doing nothing for me. I don't know anything about this book. Jack Higgins, The Eagle Has Landed, more 70s goodness. Great movie, but never read this or gone back and looked into Jack Higgins. Hannah Tinty, The Good Thief. I like the title, but don't know anything about this book. Blurbed on the cover by Juno Diaz, which may be a recommendation or a strong no for some people. But I haven't read this, don't know. It's a Dickensian American spin on Oliver Twist. I love this reprint of the Ipcress file. Again, Glenn Dayton, classic 70s. His books were all in every single charity shop, every single secondhand store. When I was first reading, there's a Hook, Line and Sinker trilogy, and Berlin Game, Mexico Set, London Match mentioned there. And the Ipcress file is a trilogy also that was made into movies with Michael Caine as Harry Palmer. I don't know if he's named Harry Palmer in the books, but in the movies he was Harry Palmer. There's the Ipcress file, there's the $1 Billion Brain, and another one. Which were of their time and part of the whole mythos of Michael Caine, but it's so dated in the 70s. But the fact that Penguin has reprinted them as these modern classics with the sort of minty cover, I like that, and I would be happy to pick it up in this edition more than sort of a beaten up Arrow paperback from the 70s. David Peace, 1974. I've read 74, 1977, 1980, and 1983. I read GB84, and I read The Damn United, which I think is his best work. This quartet was very derivative of Elroy, but nasty, dark, northern UK, northern noir. What else? The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. This is a Reese book club. Haven't read the Alice Network. Anyone tell me anything about Kate Quinn? Joseph Canon, Los Alamos. Historical novel. Los Alamos, I guess, is where the Americans developed atomic weapons. But don't know anything about this or the author. Martin Cruz Smith, Gorky Park. Read this in the last few years. This was a great novel. This is one of those 70s books that I did come back to because I think my mum definitely read this. I remember seeing this on her bedside table. And it was good. But I haven't read any of the other, I haven't gone back and read any more of the Renko novels because he's a Russian policeman and discovers in the beginning of this book 3 bodies frozen in the snow in Gorky Park, and it was kind of good. The Expats by Chris Pavone. Don't know anything about it. Someone please tell me. John Fowles, The Collector. Creepy. I've read 2 John Fowles books, The French Lieutenant's Woman, which I highly recommend, and The Collector, which is super creepy about a man who kidnaps a woman and keeps him in his basement, and he was also a lepidopterist, so he collects butterflies and pins them just so he can admire them. So there's that kind of creepy metaphor going on. Fallen out of fashion. I don't think anyone reads John Fowles anymore. Winter Counts by David Hesker Wambley Whedon. Don't know anything about this, but it's got a character called Virgil Wounded Horse. First Peoples, Native American thriller. I like that idea. He's half Lakota, half white. The man is an enforcer. The must-do call when the U.S. legal system or the tribal council fail you, or you don't even try, or don't even try. They don't even try. So I love that. If anyone knows anything about this book, that sounds like the kind of thing I would love to read. What else? The Human Factor by Graham Greene. Haven't read this. Read some other Greene and kind of done with Greene, but didn't read some of the classics. Brighton Rock, and I read The Third Man and Travels with My Aunt, but then sort of stopped reading Greene. So tell me if I should go back and read The Human Factor. Before I Go to Sleep by S.J. Watson. I feel like I've seen the movie, but I don't know the book. This was one of those thrillers that was around, but I haven't read it. What else? Miami Blues by Charles Willeford. Yes, read all four of the Hope Moseley quartet, and then read some other Charles Willeford books, sort of 70s noir. There's the Cockfighter and the Burnt Orange Heresy. Yeah, he's one of the classics of the sort of 60s and 70s noir genre. Really worth reading if you've never read any Willeford. Track him down. He's mostly forgotten these days and not very widely read, but I think one of the greats. Daniel Silver. So this was the first in the Gabriel Allons. I've read this, and I've read I think 2 or 3 since then, and I've gotten a couple more lined up because James Elroy has been raving about him. Very popular amongst my friends here because Gabriel Allons is an Israeli. He was one of the assassins who took out the perpetrators of the Munich. In the fictional version of this book, Gabriel Allons is dried out after being an assassin and retired and from the Mossad, and is working as an art restorer of all things, and gets pulled back by his old Israeli handler. So because he's an Israeli character, a lot is widely read in Israel, even though Daniel Silver is neither Israeli nor Jewish. The character he invented is Gabriel Allons, an Israeli assassin. So a lot of my friends read him, and then I didn't bother until Elroy was raving about him. So now I've read the first couple. I've got a few more, so I'll read them, but they're not great. Elmore Leonard is great. I haven't read The Hot Kid. This is one from 2005, but I've read a bunch of other Elmore Leonard, and always good value. Recommended. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your lot. I'm done. That was plenty. Take care. Bye.